The fluorescent lights in the athletic dormitory cast harsh shadows across the cinder block walls as I sat on my narrow bed, pretending to study for my economics midterm. The textbook's pages might as well have been written in ancient Greek for all the attention I could pay them. My mind kept drifting to the way Max's shoulders had looked during practice that afternoon, the way his wrestling singlet clung to his chest when he'd pinned our teammate Jeremy to the mat with an ease that made my stomach flutter in ways I desperately tried to ignore. 3 floors below, I could hear the muffled sounds of the campus coming alive for another Thursday night, students heading out to parties, couples walking hand in hand toward the quad, the distant thrum of music from the fraternity houses. But up here in room 314, the silence felt heavy with all the things I couldn't say, couldn't think, couldn't want. My phone buzzed against the scratchy dorm bedspread. Max's name lit up the screen, and my heart did that stupid thing it always did when I saw it. That little skip that made me question everything I thought I knew about myself. "You still up?" his text read. I stared at those 3 words for a full minute before typing back. "Yeah, studying." "You can't sleep. Mind if I come over?" Before I could overthink it, I texted back yes and immediately regretted it. Max and I had been best friends since freshman orientation 2 years ago, bonding over our shared love of wrestling and our mutual terror of organic chemistry. We'd been roommates last year, spending countless late nights talking about everything and nothing, our families back home, our dreams of making it to nationals, our girlfriends, and the complicated mess of college relationships. But lately, something had shifted between us. It started small, lingering glances during practice, moments when our hands would brush and neither of us would pull away immediately, conversations that seemed to dance around subjects we couldn't quite name. I told myself it was nothing, that the weird tension I felt was just stress from the upcoming season, from the pressure to maintain my spot on the varsity roster. Comment where you're listening from. I'd love to know where this story is reaching you tonight. A soft knock interrupted my spiraling thoughts. I opened the door to find Max standing in the hallway wearing nothing but gray sweatpants and a worn t-shirt from our high school wrestling camp. His dark hair was disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it, and there was something in his expression I couldn't quite read. Nervous energy mixed with determination. "Hey," he said, stepping into my room without waiting for an invitation. "Thanks for letting me come over." "No problem." I closed the door behind him, hyper-aware of how small my single room felt with both of us in it. "Everything okay?" Max sat down on my desk chair, turning it around so he could face me. For a moment, we just looked at each other in the dim light from my desk lamp. The silence stretched between us, but it wasn't comfortable like it usually was. This felt charged, electric, like the air before a thunderstorm. "Tyler," he started, then stopped. He ran a hand through his hair again, a gesture I'd seen him make 1,000 times, but somehow tonight it made my mouth go dry. "I need to tell you something, and I need you to promise me you'll hear me out before you say anything." My stomach dropped. This was it. He'd figured out that I'd been looking at him differently, that I'd been having thoughts that definitely weren't appropriate for 2 straight best friends. He was going to tell me he was uncomfortable, that maybe we needed some space, that our friendship couldn't continue the way it had been. "Okay," I managed, settling back onto my bed and trying to appear calmer than I felt. Max took a deep breath, his hands gripping the arms of the chair. "You know how things ended with Katie last month?" I nodded. Max had been dating Katie, a sweet girl from his psychology class, for about 6 months. Then suddenly, without explanation, he'd broken up with her. When I'd asked him about it, he just said they weren't compatible and changed the subject. "The thing is," Max continued, his voice quieter now, "I didn't break up with her because of anything she did wrong. She's great. Perfect, actually. The kind of girl any guy would be lucky to have. So why did you end it?" Max's eyes met mine, and I saw something there that made my breath catch: vulnerability, fear, and something else I was afraid to name. Because every time I was with her, every time we were together, I kept thinking about someone else. His voice was barely above a whisper now. And that someone else, it wasn't another girl. The words hung in the air between us like a confession, like a prayer, like a challenge. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it in the quiet room. "Tyler," Max said, leaning forward in the chair, "I've been going crazy trying to figure this out, trying to understand what's happening to me. And I think maybe you might be going through something similar." I wanted to deny it, to laugh it off and tell him he was imagining things. That's what I should have done. preserved our friendship, maintained the careful balance we'd built, kept us both safe in the comfortable lie we'd been living. But looking at him now, seeing the hope and terror warring in his expression, I couldn't find the words to lie. "What are you saying?" I asked instead, my voice hoarse. Max stood up from the chair and took a step closer to my bed. The space between us felt like a chasm and a hair's breadth all at once. "I'm saying that I can't stop thinking about you. About us. About what it would be like if we stopped pretending that this thing between us is just friendship." He swallowed hard. "I'm saying that maybe we could figure this out together. Privately. Just to see." Just to see what? The question came out sharper than I intended, but I needed to understand what he was offering me. What he was asking of me. To see if what I'm feeling is real. To see if you feel it too. Max's hands were shaking slightly. "I know it's crazy. I know it could mess everything up between us. But Tyler, I can't keep pretending anymore. I can't keep dating girls and thinking about you. I can't keep watching you with Stephanie and wanting to be the one you're with instead." The mention of my girlfriend's name hit me like a physical blow, not because I loved her. I cared about Stephanie, but what we had felt more like an elaborate performance than a real relationship. But because it meant Max had been watching me the same way I'd been watching him. "This could ruin everything," I said quietly. "Our friendship, our spots on the team, our reputations. If anyone found out." "I know." Max sat down on the edge of my bed, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from his skin. "But what if it doesn't ruin everything? What if it makes everything make sense for the first time?" I stared at Max sitting on my bed, his words hanging between us like a challenge. The moonlight streaming through my dorm window cast shadows across his face, making him look both vulnerable and determined. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it in the silence. "Makes sense?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Max, nothing about this makes sense. We're teammates. We're supposed to be straight. We have girlfriends." He corrected quietly. "I told you, I broke up with Katie." The weight of that hit me again. Max had actually ended things with Katie, beautiful, perfect Katie who everyone said he'd probably marry. If he could do that, maybe he really was as confused and desperate as I was. "What about Stephanie?" he asked, and I felt my stomach clench. Stephanie. Sweet, trusting Stephanie who texted me good morning every day and talked about meeting my parents over Christmas break. The girl who deserved so much better than a boyfriend who fantasized about his male best friend every night. "I don't know," I admitted. "I can't just." "You can't keep living a lie forever, Tyler." Max's voice was gentle but firm. "Trust me, I've been trying. It's killing me." I really looked at him, and saw something I'd never noticed before. The exhaustion in his eyes, the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands trembled slightly where they rested on his knees. Max, who was always so confident, so sure of himself, looked like he was barely holding it together. "How long?" I asked. "How long have you been feeling this way?" He was quiet for so long I thought he wasn't going to answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was raw with honesty. "Remember sophomore year? That wrestling tournament in Albany where we had to share a hotel room?" I nodded. Of course I remembered. We'd been placed together randomly, and I'd spent the entire night lying awake, hyper-aware of Max sleeping just feet away from me. "You had a nightmare," he continued. "You were thrashing around, talking in your sleep. I got up to wake you, and when I touched your shoulder, you grabbed my hand and held on to it. Even after you woke up, you didn't let go for like 10 minutes. My face burned with embarrassment. I remembered that night vaguely. I'd been having the recurring dream about my father finding out some terrible secret about me. But I hadn't realized Max had been awake, that he'd seen me so vulnerable. "I kept thinking about how your hand felt in mine," Max whispered. "How right it felt. And I knew I was in trouble. That was over a year ago." Max had been carrying this secret, these feelings, for over a year. Just like I had. "The worst part," he continued, "was watching you with other girls. Seeing you kiss Stephanie at parties, hearing you talk about her like you were happy. I started wondering if I was losing my mind, if I was seeing something that wasn't there." "You weren't," I said quickly. "God, Max, you weren't imagining anything." Relief flickered across his face, followed immediately by fear. "So what do we do now?" "We can't exactly announce it to the team. Coach Morrison would probably kick us both off if he even suspected." He was right, and we both knew it. Our wrestling program was old school, traditional. Coach Morrison was a good man, But he came from a generation where guys like us stayed hidden. The team dynamic, the locker room culture, the casual homophobic jokes that flew around during practice, it would all become impossible if anyone knew. Maybe we don't have to tell anyone, I said slowly. Maybe we can just figure this out between us first. Max's eyes met mine, and I saw hope mixed with terror. You mean? I mean, maybe you're right. Maybe we can explore this privately, see what it means. No pressure, no labels, just... I struggled to find the words. Just honesty. For once. The silence stretched between us, heavy with possibility. I could hear my roommate Jake's music playing softly through his earphones across the room, his occasional laugh at whatever he was watching on his laptop. Normal college life continuing around us while we sat on the edge of something that could change everything. There would have to be rules, Max said finally. Boundaries. We can't let it affect the team or our wrestling. And we can't tell anyone, not even our closest friends. I nodded, though something about the clinical way he said it stung a little. Like he was already trying to minimize what this might become. And if it gets too complicated, if it starts to mess things up, we stop. We go back to being just friends and pretend none of this happened. Can we do that? I asked. Can we really just go back? Max looked at me for a long moment, and I saw the same doubt in his eyes that I was feeling. But he nodded anyway. We have to be able to. We have too much to lose otherwise. I wanted to argue, to say that maybe some things were worth the risk, but I was too scared, too grateful for even this chance to push for more. Okay, I said. Rules. Boundaries. Just between us. Max stood up from my bed, and for a moment I thought he was leaving. Instead, he moved to my desk chair, putting some distance between us. Like he was already implementing those boundaries he'd mentioned. I should go, he said. Jake will be back soon, and we don't want him asking questions. He was right, but I felt a surge of panic at the thought of him leaving. What if he changed his mind? What if he woke up tomorrow and decided this was all a mistake? Max, I said as he headed toward the door. He turned back, his hand on the doorknob. Are you going to regret this? Tomorrow, I mean. When you have time to think about what we just decided. His expression softened, and for a moment, the careful walls he'd been building came down. Tyler, I've been thinking about this every day for over a year. The only thing I regret is waiting so long to say something. After he left, I sat on my bed staring at the door, trying to process what had just happened. Max wanted me. Not just physically, but enough to risk everything we'd built together. Enough to break up with his girlfriend and come to my room in the middle of the night to bare his soul. I thought about Stephanie, probably asleep in her sorority house, dreaming about our future together. The future I'd been half-heartedly planning while fantasizing about my best friend. She deserved the truth, or at least deserved not to be strung along by someone who could never love her the way she needed. But I wasn't ready to end things with her yet. That would make this real in a way that terrified me. As long as I was still technically straight, still playing the part everyone expected, I could tell myself this thing with Max was just experimentation. Just two confused college guys figuring things out. My phone buzzed with a text message. For a wild moment, I thought it might be Max, but it was just Jake letting me know he was staying at his girlfriend's place tonight. Which meant I had the room to myself, time to think without pretending everything was normal. I lay back on my bed, staring at the ceiling, and let myself imagine what this might mean. Secret moments with Max, stolen glances that finally meant something, the possibility of touching him the way I'd dreamed about for months. It felt too good to be true, too dangerous to be smart. But as I drifted off to sleep, for the first time in years, I felt something that might have been hope. The next 3 days passed in a haze of nervous energy and stolen glances. Every time I saw Max in the dining hall or walking across campus, my heart would slam against my ribs like it was trying to escape. We'd exchanged numbers that night in my dorm room, but neither of us had texted. The silence felt loaded, pregnant with possibility and terror in equal measure. Thursday evening, my phone finally buzzed. Asterisk library. Third floor study room 314. 9 p.m. Just to talk. Asterisk. I stared at the message for a full minute before typing back a simple okay. My hands were shaking so badly I had to retype it twice. The hours crawled by. I tried studying, tried watching Netflix, tried anything to make time move faster. Nothing worked. By 8:30, I was pacing my dorm room like a caged animal. Stephanie had texted earlier asking if I wanted to grab dinner, and I'd made up some excuse about having too much homework. The lie sat heavy in my stomach, but not as heavy as the anticipation of seeing Max alone again. Study room 314 was tucked away in a corner of the library's third floor, one of those small glass-walled spaces that was usually empty this late in the evening. I found Max already there, hunched over a textbook that I was pretty sure he wasn't actually reading. His jaw was tight, and he looked up when I knocked softly on the door. "Hey," he said, his voice carefully neutral as I slipped inside and closed the door behind me. "Hey." I took the chair across from him, the small table feeling like a canyon between us. "So, talking." Max closed his textbook and leaned back in his chair. "I've been thinking about what I said, about what we talked about. And I think we need to be really clear about what this is." His eyes met mine, and I saw the same mix of want and fear that had been eating at me for days. "If we're going to do this." The words hung in the air between us. "If we're going to do this." My mouth went dry. "What do you think it is?" I asked. Max was quiet for a long moment, his fingers drumming against the table. "I think it's two friends who are curious, who trust each other enough to figure some things out without it getting weird." Friends. Curious. The clinical way he said it made something twist in my chest, but I nodded anyway. "Okay. I'm not gay, Tyler." The words came out sharp, almost defensive. "I need you to know that. This isn't about that." I wanted to ask him what he thought it was about then, but I bit my tongue. "Okay," I said again. "And we can't tell anyone. Not Daniel, not any of the guys on the team. Not our girlfriends. Nobody." "I don't have a girlfriend anymore," I reminded him. "Right. Well, nobody can know anyway." He leaned forward, his voice dropping. "This could destroy everything. You know that, right? Our wrestling careers, our reputations, our futures. If anyone found out." I know. And I did know. I'd been living with that fear for years. Max studied my face for a moment, then nodded. "My place Saturday night. My roommate's going home for the weekend." My heart hammered against my ribs. Saturday night. Just to see. Just to figure things out. He was already packing up his textbook, avoiding my eyes. No big deal. No big deal, right? Saturday felt like it would never come and arrive too quickly all at the same time. I spent the day in a state of nervous energy that made it impossible to concentrate on anything. I went for a run, tried to study, reorganized my entire dorm room. Nothing helped. By the time evening rolled around, I felt like I might crawl out of my skin. Max lived in one of the newer dorms across campus, a suite-style setup that he shared with his roommate Jake. When I knocked on his door at 8 o'clock, he answered immediately, like he'd been waiting by the door. "Come in," he said, stepping aside to let me pass. The common area was dark except for the light spilling out from his bedroom. Jake left around noon. I followed him into his room, taking in the familiar space with new eyes. I'd been here before, plenty of times, but tonight everything felt different. Charged. Max's bed was unmade, his wrestling gear hanging over his desk chair. It smelled like his cologne and something else, something that was just him. "You want a beer?" he asked, pulling 2 bottles from a mini-fridge. "Sure." My voice sounded strange, too high. I accepted the beer and took a long pull, hoping the alcohol might calm my nerves. It didn't. Max sat on his bed, back against the wall, and patted the space beside him. I hesitated for just a moment before joining him, careful to leave space between us. We sat in silence for a while, drinking our beers and pretending to watch some random show Max had put on his laptop. "This is weird," he said finally. "Yeah. Good weird or bad weird?" I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw that he was just as nervous as I was. It was oddly comforting. "I don't know yet." Max laughed, a short, nervous sound. "Honest answer." I tried to be. He turned to face me more fully, and suddenly the space between us felt electric. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Have you ever? With a guy? I mean?" I shook my head. "Have you?" "No." He was quiet for a moment, but I think about it sometimes. More than sometimes. The admission hung between us, raw and honest. I set my beer on his nightstand with hands that weren't quite steady. "What do you think about?" Max's cheeks flushed slightly. "You really want to know?" "Yeah." He looked down at his hands, then back up at me. "Kissing, mostly. What it would feel like. If it would be different." "Different from what?" "From kissing girls." His voice was barely above a whisper. From kissing Katie. My breath caught. And what do you think? Do you think it would be different? Instead of answering, Max shifted closer on the bed. Close enough that I could feel the heat radiating off his body, close enough to see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. Maybe we should find out. The kiss was tentative at first, barely more than a brush of lips. Max's mouth was warm and soft, and he tasted like beer and something else, something that made my head spin. When he didn't pull away, I kissed him back, deeper this time, and felt him make a small sound in the back of his throat. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. Definitely different, Max said, his voice rough. Good different. Very good different. He was looking at me like he was seeing me for the first time. Can we do that again? The second kiss was less hesitant, more sure. Max's hand came up to cup the back of my neck, his fingers tangling in my hair, and I felt something deep in my chest crack open. This was what I'd been dreaming about, what I'd been wanting for so long I'd almost convinced myself it would never happen. We made out like teenagers, all hungry mouths and roaming hands, until we were both hard and panting. When Max's hand slipped under my shirt, his palm hot against my skin, I thought I might spontaneously combust. Is this okay? He whispered against my mouth. More than okay. We didn't go all the way that night, but we went far enough that there was no pretending it was just curiosity anymore. Afterward, we lay next to each other on his narrow bed, not quite touching but close enough that I could feel his breathing slowly return to normal. That was. Max started, then trailed off. Yeah, we're still good, right? Still friends. There was something almost desperate in his voice that made my chest tighten. Of course we're still friends. Good. He rolled onto his side to face me. Because I think I want to do that again sometime. Yeah. He was quiet for a moment. But Tyler, what I said before still stands. This has to stay between us. I know. And it doesn't change anything else. We're still the same people, still on the team, still. He gestured vaguely. Still normal. Normal. The word stung more than it should have, but I nodded anyway. Right. Normal. Over the next few weeks, we fell into a pattern. Max would text me when his roommate was out, or I'd find excuses to stop by his room during the day when I knew he'd be alone. We'd talk for a while, sometimes about normal things like classes or wrestling, and then somehow we'd end up kissing, touching, losing ourselves in each other. It was intoxicating and confusing and not nearly enough all at the same time. Every encounter left me wanting more time, more intimacy, more honesty about what we were doing and why. But Max seemed determined to keep everything light, casual, like we were just two friends helping each other out. You're overthinking this, he said one afternoon after I'd tried to bring up what was happening between us. We were lying on his bed, my head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat slowly return to normal. It's just physical, Tyler. Just two guys figuring things out. But it didn't feel just physical to me. Not when Max would trace patterns on my skin with his fingertips, or when he'd look at me during wrestling practice with an intensity that made my knees weak. Not when he'd pull me closer after we kissed, like he couldn't bear to let me go. The worst part was maintaining the pretense around everyone else. Max threw himself into acting aggressively straight, flirting with girls at parties and making crude comments about women that made me feel sick. I watched him charm Leah Morrison at a team gathering, saw the way she blushed when he complimented her, and felt something ugly and jealous twist in my gut. You okay, man? Daniel asked, appearing beside me with 2 beers. You look like someone pissed in your cereal. I'm fine, I lied, accepting the beer but not taking my eyes off Max. He had his hand on Leah's lower back now, leaning in close to whisper something in her ear that made her laugh. Uh-huh. Daniel followed my gaze. Max is really putting on a show tonight, isn't he? My blood went cold. What do you mean? I mean he's been flirting with every girl in sight since he got here. It's like he's trying to prove something. Daniel took a swig of his beer, then looked at me sideways. You two have been spending a lot of time together lately. We're friends, I said quickly. We've always been friends. I know that. I'm just saying, you both seem kind of. I don't know. Different lately. Before I could respond, Max appeared at my side, slightly out of breath and grinning. Hey, what are you guys talking about? Just commenting on your impressive game tonight, Daniel said with a smirk. Leah looked pretty smitten. Max's grin widened, but I caught the quick glance he shot in my direction. What can I say? I'm irresistible. Modest, too, I muttered, then immediately regretted it when both of them looked at me strangely. I'm going to get another beer, I said, pushing away from the wall. Anyone need anything? I didn't wait for an answer, heading for the kitchen and hoping the distance would help me get my emotions under control. It didn't work. If anything, being alone with my thoughts made it worse. I kept seeing Max's hand on Leah's back, kept hearing him laugh at Daniel's comment about his game. It's just physical, he'd said. Just two guys figuring things out. But if that was true, why did watching him flirt with someone else feel like being punched in the stomach? There you are. Max's voice made me jump. He'd followed me into the kitchen, closing the door behind him. You disappeared. Just needed some air. Are you mad at me? I looked at him, this beautiful, complicated boy who was slowly driving me insane, and felt something crack inside my chest. Why would I be mad? I don't know. You seemed upset when I was talking to Leah. You can talk to whoever you want, I said, hating how bitter I sounded. We're just friends, right? Just figuring things out. Max stepped closer, his voice dropping. Tyler. No, you're right. This doesn't mean anything. It's just physical. I set my beer down on the counter with more force than necessary. I should probably head back to my dorm. Don't. His hand caught my wrist as I moved toward the door. Don't leave like this. Like what? Like you're angry with me for doing exactly what we agreed I would do. His grip tightened slightly. We both have to maintain appearances, Tyler. You know that. He was right, and I hated that he was right. But knowing something intellectually and feeling it emotionally were two very different things. I know, I said finally. I know you're right. But watching you with her. I shook my head. Never mind. Forget it. Tyler. Max's other hand came up to cup my face, his thumb brushing across my cheekbone. Look at me. I did, and saw something soft and vulnerable in his expression that he usually kept hidden. When I'm with her, or any of them, I'm thinking about you, he said quietly. The whole time, I'm thinking about you. The admission hit me like a physical blow. Max. I know this is complicated. I know it's not fair to either of us. His thumb was still tracing patterns on my skin. But I can't stop. I don't want to stop. Then don't. It's not that simple. It could be. Max's hand dropped away from my face. No, it couldn't. You know it couldn't. And just like that, the walls were back up. The moment of vulnerability was gone, replaced by the careful distance Max always maintained when things got too real. I should go, I said. Tyler, wait. But I was already moving toward the door, suddenly desperate to get away before I said something I couldn't take back. Something like how I was pretty sure I was falling for him, or how much it hurt to watch him pretend I didn't matter. I'll see you at practice, I said without looking back. The walk back to my dorm felt endless. My phone buzzed twice with texts from Max, but I didn't look at them. I needed space to think, to figure out how to keep doing this without losing my mind. Because the truth was, I was in way deeper than I'd ever intended to be. What had started as curiosity and attraction was becoming something much more dangerous. Something that felt suspiciously like love. And from the way Max kept insisting it was just physical, just temporary, just something to figure out and move on from, I was pretty sure I was in it alone. The locker room felt different now, charged with an electricity that made my skin crawl. Every casual conversation between teammates sounded like potential exposure. Every glance felt loaded with suspicion. I was toweling off after practice when Daniel Martinez dropped onto the bench beside me, his usual easy grin replaced by something more calculating. So what's the deal with you and Max lately? He asked, keeping his voice low enough that the other guys couldn't hear over the shower noise. My stomach dropped, but I forced myself to keep drying my hair. What do you mean? Come on, Tyler. You two have been acting weird for weeks. All those private conversations, the way you look at each other when you think nobody's watching. Daniel leaned closer, his dark eyes studying my face. And don't even get me started on how you both go MIA at the same time during team parties. I felt heat creep up my neck. We're best friends, man. We've always hung out. This is different. Daniel's voice carried a certainty that made my blood run cold. I've known you both for 3 years. Max used to be all over Katie, couldn't keep his hands off her. Now he barely looks at girls, except when he's putting on some kind of show. And you? You're supposedly with Stephanie, but I've seen how you watch him during practice. The accusation hung in the air between us like a live wire. I wanted to deny it, to laugh it off, but the words stuck in my throat. Daniel was too observant, too smart to be fooled by weak protests. "You're imagining things," I finally managed, but even I could hear how hollow it sounded. Daniel stood up, shouldering his gym bag. "Maybe. But if I'm not, you both need to be more careful. Coach Williams isn't exactly the most progressive guy, and some of the other teammates." He shook his head. "Just watch yourselves." After he left, I sat alone in the locker room, my hands shaking as I tried to process what had just happened. If Daniel could see through our act, who else was watching? How long before our secret became campus gossip? The team party at Jake's house that weekend felt like walking into a minefield. The basement was packed with wrestlers and their dates, music pounding while couples danced and groups clustered around the beer pong table. I'd come alone, telling Stephanie I was sick, but the lie sat heavy in my stomach as I watched the other guys with their girlfriends. Max arrived an hour after me, looking effortlessly confident in his fitted jeans and black t-shirt. But instead of seeking me out like he usually did, he made a beeline for the group of girls by the makeshift bar. I watched from across the room as he struck up a conversation with Leah Chin, a sophomore from the soccer team who'd been eyeing him all semester. "Looking a little lonely there, Romano," Jake called out, appearing beside me with 2 red cups. "Where's Stephanie tonight?" "Under the weather," I said, accepting the beer gratefully. "Figured I'd still show up, support the team." "Good man. Though it looks like Max is doing plenty of supporting for both of you." Jake nodded toward the bar, where Max now had his arm around Leah's waist, whispering something in her ear that made her laugh and lean into him. The sight hit me like a physical blow. I knew this was part of Max's performance, his way of maintaining the straight facade, but watching him touch another person so casually when he spent our private moments insisting nothing between us meant anything felt like betrayal. "Yeah, he's always been good with the ladies," I managed, taking a long pull of beer. As the night wore on, Max's performance became more elaborate. He pulled Leah onto the improvised dance floor, his hands on her hips as they moved to the music. When someone suggested a game of truth or dare, he was the first to volunteer, accepting a dare to kiss her in front of everyone with theatrical enthusiasm. I found myself drinking more than usual, trying to numb the jealousy that felt like acid in my chest. Every laugh from Max's direction, every casual touch between him and Leah, reminded me of how easily he could pretend I didn't exist. "You okay, man?" Daniel appeared beside me again, his expression concerned. "You look like you're about to punch someone." "Just tired," I lied, but Daniel's knowing look suggested he wasn't buying it. "Must be hard," he said quietly, "watching someone you care about with someone else." The comment was innocent enough to deflect suspicion from anyone overhearing, but loaded with enough meaning to make me meet his eyes. Daniel knew. Maybe he didn't have proof, but he'd figured out enough to be dangerous. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said, but my voice lacked conviction. "Right." Daniel squeezed my shoulder. "Just remember what I said about being careful. Some secrets are worth protecting." When Max finally extracted himself from Leah's attention around midnight, I was 3 beers past buzzed and barely containing my anger. He found me on the back porch, where I'd escaped to get some air and perspective. "There you are," he said, his voice carrying that easy confidence he used when he was performing. "I was looking for you." "Were you?" The bitterness in my voice was impossible to hide. "Because it looked like you were pretty occupied with Leah." Max glanced around to make sure we were alone, then moved closer. "Come on, Tyler. You know that wasn't real." "Do I?" Because from where I was standing, it looked pretty convincing. I took a step back, needing distance. "The way you touched her, kissed her. Hell, half the team is probably expecting you to take her home tonight." "That's the point," Max said, frustration creeping into his voice. "I have to make it look real." "We both do." "No, you want to make it look real." I shot back. "You want to have your cake and eat it too. You want to hook up with me in private while playing the straight stud in public." Max's jaw tightened. "That's not what this is." "Then what is it, Max?" "Because I'm getting pretty tired of being your dirty little secret." The words hung between us like a challenge. Max looked around again, then grabbed my arm. "Not here. Let's go." He led me to his car, neither of us speaking until we were safely inside with the doors closed. The sudden quiet felt oppressive after the noise of the party. "What do you want from me?" Max asked finally, his hands gripping the steering wheel. "I can't just stop caring about what people think. I want you to stop treating me like I'm nothing," I said, the alcohol making me braver than usual. I want you to acknowledge that what we have is real, not just some experiment you're conducting. It is real, Max said quietly. But it's also complicated. It's only complicated because you make it complicated. I turned to face him fully. Do you have any idea how it feels to watch you with someone else? To know that you can touch them without shame while you act like touching me is some kind of burden? Max was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the dark street. I never meant to make you feel that way. But you did. You do. I felt tears threatening and blinked them back. I can't keep doing this, Max. I can't keep pretending that what we have doesn't matter to me. It matters to me too, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Does it? Because from where I'm sitting, it seems like maintaining your reputation matters more. Max finally turned to look at me, and I saw something raw and vulnerable in his expression. You think this is easy for me? You think I don't care about you? I think you care more about what other people think than you care about me, I said, the words coming out harsher than I intended. That's not true. Max's voice was tight with emotion. You have no idea what you're talking about. Then explain it to me, I demanded. Help me understand why you can kiss Leah in front of everyone, but you can barely look at me in public. Help me understand why what we do together means so little to you that you can pretend it doesn't exist. It doesn't mean nothing, Max said, his composure finally cracking. It means everything, and that's the problem. The admission hung in the air between us, raw and honest in a way that made my chest tight. This was the first time Max had acknowledged that our connection went deeper than physical attraction, and the vulnerability in his voice made me want to reach for him. Max, I started, but he was already shaking his head. No, forget I said that. This is exactly why we need to keep things simple. Simple. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. There's nothing simple about this. There's nothing simple about the way I feel about you. Max went very still. What are you saying? I'm saying that what we have isn't just physical for me. It never was. I took a shaky breath. I'm saying that watching you with Leah tonight made me want to put my fist through a wall. I'm saying that I think about you when you're not around, that I want to text you good morning and hold your hand and do all the stupid relationship things that terrify you. Max stared at me like I just confessed to murder. Tyler, we can't. Can't what? Can't be honest about what this is? Can't admit that there's something real between us. We can't complicate things, Max said, but his voice lacked conviction. Things are already complicated, I said. They've been complicated since the first time we kissed. The only difference is that I'm tired of pretending they're not. Max ran his hands through his hair, looking more distressed than I'd ever seen him. You don't understand. If people find out. People like Daniel? Max's head snapped up. What about Daniel? He knows, Max. Or at least he suspects. He cornered me in the locker room after practice, asking questions about us. And tonight, he basically told me he knows I care about you. The color drained from Max's face. What did you tell him? Nothing. But he's not stupid, and neither are the other guys. You can't keep acting like we're invisible just because you're scared. I'm not scared, Max said, but the denial was automatic, unconvincing. Then what are you? I asked. Because from where I'm sitting, you look terrified. Max was quiet for so long I thought he wasn't going to answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was small and defeated. I'm terrified of losing everything I've worked for. I'm terrified of disappointing my parents, of losing my scholarship, of having the whole team look at me differently. And what about me? I asked. Are you terrified of losing me? Max met my eyes, and I saw the answer there before he spoke. Every day. The confession broke something open in my chest. This was the Max I'd been hoping to reach, the one who existed beneath all the fear and performance. But even as relief flooded through me, I knew we were far from okay. Then why do you keep pushing me away? I asked. Why do you keep pretending that what we have doesn't matter? Because if it doesn't matter, then losing it won't destroy me, Max said, his voice breaking slightly. But if it does matter, if you matter as much as I think you do, then I'm completely fucked. The raw honesty in his words made me want to reach across the space between us, to comfort him the way I would if we were alone in one of our rooms. But we were in a car outside a party, where anyone could see us, and the reminder of our constraints felt like a physical weight. You're not fucked, I said softly. Scared, maybe, but not fucked. Max laughed, but it was bitter. You're so sure about that. I'm sure that whatever happens, we'll figure it out together. Will we? Max looked at me with something that might have been hope. Because I don't know how to do this, Tyler. I don't know how to be what you need me to be. I don't need you to be anything other than honest, I said. I need you to stop pretending that what we have isn't real. I need you to stop treating me like I'm disposable. Max was quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. I can try. That's all I'm asking for. We sat in silence for a while, the weight of the conversation settling between us. There was more to say, more to work through, but for the first time in weeks, I felt like we were on the same side instead of fighting against each other. I should probably go back in, Max said eventually. People will notice if I'm gone too long. Yeah, I agreed, though the thought of returning to the party, of watching Max slip back into his performance, made my stomach turn. Are you going to take Leah home? Max looked at me like I'd slapped him. Is that what you think of me? I don't know what to think anymore, I admitted. You've been so good at separating your public and private selves, I can't tell what's real and what's for show. Max reached across the console and took my hand, his thumb tracing over my knuckles. This is real, he said quietly. Whatever else you doubt, don't doubt that. The touch sent familiar warmth through my chest, but it was colored now by the conversation we just had. There was hope there, but also uncertainty. Max was trying, but I could see the fear still lurking behind his eyes. I won't take her home, Max said, releasing my hand. I'll make some excuse about being tired. Okay. And Tyler? Tomorrow, can we talk more? Really talk, not just. He gestured vaguely, and I knew he meant not just the physical encounters that had defined our secret relationship. Yeah, I said, feeling something loosen in my chest. I like that. Max nodded and got out of the car, but before he closed the door, he looked back at me. For what it's worth, tonight sucked for me too. Pretending with her when all I wanted was to be with you. Before I could respond, he was gone, walking back toward the house with his hands shoved deep in his pockets. I sat in the car for a few more minutes, processing everything that had happened. The conversation hadn't solved anything, not really, but it had cracked something open between us. For the first time since this whole thing started, Max had admitted that I mattered to him, that what we had was real. It wasn't enough, not yet, but it was a start. When I finally went back inside, the party was winding down. Max was sitting on the couch with Leah, but there was distance between them now, and when our eyes met across the room, he didn't look away immediately like he usually did. Daniel appeared beside me one more time as I was getting ready to leave. Better? He asked, nodding toward where Max sat. Maybe, I said, not bothering to deny the implication. Good. You both deserve to be happy, whatever that looks like. Walking to my car, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. Max and I still had a lot to work through, but tonight had shown me that beneath all his fear and performance, he cared about me. The admission that I mattered to him, that losing me scared him, had changed something fundamental between us. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring, or how we'd navigate the complicated reality of our feelings in a world that wasn't ready to accept them. But for the first time since this whole thing started, I felt like we were moving towards something real instead of just hiding from it. The drive back to campus gave me time to think about Daniel's words, about the risks we were taking and the careful balance we'd have to maintain. But mostly, I thought about the look in Max's eyes when he'd finally let his guard down, the vulnerability that had made him seem younger and more real than all his confident performances combined. Whatever came next, at least now I knew that I wasn't alone in this. Max felt it too, even if he was still too scared to fully embrace it. And maybe, with time and patience, we could figure out how to build something real together, even if we had to keep it hidden for now. The possibility felt like the first genuine hope I'd had in months. The words hung between us like a confession that changed everything. Max's admission that I mattered to him, that this was real, it should have felt like victory. Instead, I watched him collapse onto the edge of my bed, his head in his hands, and realized that breakthrough had cracked something open in him that he'd been desperately trying to keep sealed. I can't do this, he whispered, but his voice lacked the conviction it usually carried when he tried to push me away. This wasn't the angry denial I'd grown used to. This was something rawer, more fragile. I sat down beside him, close enough that our knees almost touched but not quite making contact. Can't do what? Any of it. His hands moved through his hair, the gesture so familiar it made my chest ache. I can't keep pretending you don't matter. I can't keep acting like this is nothing. But I also can't. He looked up at me, and his eyes were wet. Tyler, I can't lose everything. The vulnerability in his voice stripped away every defense I had left. This wasn't the Max who commanded respect on the wrestling mat or charmed his way through every social situation. This was someone terrified and trying not to show it and failing completely. What do you think you'll lose? I asked softly. Everything I've worked for my entire life. The words came out in a rush, like he'd been holding them back for months. Wrestling. My scholarship. My family. His voice cracked on the last word. Do you know what my dad said when he found out Jake Morrison got kicked off the team last year for being gay? He said it was a good thing they got rid of the perverts before they could corrupt the real athletes. My stomach dropped. I remembered Jake, quiet, kept to himself, one of the best wrestlers on the team until someone outed him, and he just disappeared. The official story was academic problems, but everyone knew the truth. My dad was proud of me for the first time in my life when I got this scholarship, Max continued, his voice barely above a whisper. You know what he called me growing up? Soft. Said I was too sensitive, too gentle, that I needed to toughen up and be a real man. Wrestling changed that. Finally, I was something he could brag about to his friends. I wanted to reach for him, but something in his posture warned me off. He was balanced on a knife's edge, and the wrong move might send him retreating back behind his walls. So I learned to be what he wanted, Max went on. What everyone wanted. The perfect athlete, the ladies' man, the guy who never questioned anything or showed weakness. And it worked. For years, it worked. Until it didn't, I said quietly. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Until you. God, Tyler, do you know how long I've been fighting this? Fighting myself. He turned to look at me directly for the first time since he'd sat down. I've known since I was 15, maybe longer. But I buried it so deep I almost convinced myself it wasn't real. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. What changed? You did. The admission seemed to surprise him as much as it did me. You and your stupid honesty and the way you never tried to be anyone else, even when it would have been easier. You made it impossible to keep lying to myself. I thought about all the times I'd felt like a fraud, all the nights I'd spent hating myself for wanting him, for being unable to just be normal. You think I'm honest? Aren't you? Even when you were with Stephanie, even when you were trying to fit in, there was always something real about you. Something that refused to be completely hidden. He shook his head. I envied that. I hated it sometimes, because it made me feel like even more of a fake. Max. I couldn't help myself anymore. I reached out and touched his hand. He didn't pull away. You're not a fake. Yes, I am. His fingers curled around mine, holding on like I was an anchor. Do you know how many times I practiced in the mirror? How to stand, how to talk about girls, how to make sure nobody could ever suspect. I turned myself into a performance. The pain in his voice was almost unbearable. I squeezed his hand tighter. That's not being fake. That's surviving. Is it? He looked at me with something that might have been hope. Because sometimes I feel like I've been pretending for so long, I don't know who I really am anymore. I thought about my own journey, the years of confusion and self-doubt, the way I'd tried to force myself to feel things I didn't feel while suppressing the things I did. I know who you are. Do you? You're the guy who stays after practice to help underclassmen with their technique even when you're exhausted. You're the one who drove 3 hours to be at your little sister's piano recital even though you had a tournament the next day. You're the person who remembers everyone's birthday and somehow always knows the right thing to say when someone's having a rough day. His eyes were definitely wet now. Tyler. You're also the guy who's so scared of disappointing people that you'd rather disappoint yourself. Who cares so much about being loved that you'll hide everything real about yourself to avoid being rejected. I shifted closer to him on the bed. But that's not fake, Max. That's human. I'm terrified, he whispered. Of what, specifically? Of losing my family. Of losing wrestling. Of everyone looking at me differently. He paused. Of losing you. You're not going to lose me. How can you promise that? What if I'm not brave enough? What if I can't be what you need? I studied his face, seeing past the fear to something deeper. What do you think I need? Someone who isn't ashamed of you. Someone who can give you a real relationship instead of sneaking around and pretending you don't exist in public. The fact that he understood exactly what I wanted, what I deserved, made everything more complicated and more hopeful at the same time. I won't lie and say I don't want those things eventually. But Max, I'm not asking you to come out tomorrow. I'm not asking you to risk everything all at once. Then what are you asking for? I took a deep breath, knowing this was the moment where I either chose safety or chose honesty. I'm asking you to stop punishing yourself for feeling something real. I'm asking you to stop treating this like it's something shameful that needs to be hidden away and never acknowledged. It does need to be hidden, he said, but there was less conviction in it now. The physical stuff, maybe. For now. But not the feelings, Max. Not between us. I turned his hand over in mine, tracing the lines on his palm. I'm asking you to stop pretending I'm just some guy you mess around with when you're bored. I'm asking you to admit that what we have matters, even if it's complicated. He was quiet for a long time, watching me trace patterns on his skin. I've never told anyone, he said finally. Told anyone what? That I might be. He struggled with the words. I've never said it out loud. My chest tightened with the weight of what he was offering me. You don't have to say anything you're not ready for. What if I'm never ready? Then we figure it out as we go. I looked up at him. But Max, you can't keep running from yourself forever. It's killing you. It's keeping me safe. Is it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like it's tearing you apart. He pulled his hand free and stood up, pacing to the window. You make it sound simple. I'm not saying it's simple. I'm saying it's worth it. How do you know? I stood up too, crossing to stand behind him. Because I've been where you are. I spent 3 years trying to force myself to be straight, trying to convince myself that what I felt for you was just confusion or experimentation or whatever else I could call it that wasn't the truth. He turned around, and we were suddenly very close. What changed? I realized that hating myself was harder than accepting myself. And I realized that living a lie wasn't protecting anyone. It was just making everyone miserable. I reached up to touch his face, and he didn't pull away. You don't have to figure out everything at once. You don't have to have all the answers. But you have to stop treating your feelings like they're wrong. What if they are wrong? Do you think they are? He closed his eyes, leaning into my touch. No. God help me. No. Then trust that. Trust yourself. I don't know how. Start small. Admit that this is real, that it matters. Stop apologizing for wanting something genuine with me. I moved my thumb across his cheekbone. Stop acting like I'm a dirty secret you're ashamed of. I'm not ashamed of you, he said quickly. Tyler, I'm not ashamed of you. But you're ashamed of yourself for wanting me. He opened his eyes, and the pain in them was so raw it took my breath away. Yes. The honesty in that single word broke something open in my chest. Max. I know it's fucked up. I know it's unfair to you. But I don't know how to stop feeling like there's something wrong with me. I moved closer, until we were breathing the same air. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with us. My whole life, everyone I've ever trusted has told me that people like us are broken. Sinful. Wrong. His voice was shaking. How do I just turn that off? You don't turn it off all at once. You start by questioning it. You start by looking at what we have together and asking yourself if it feels broken. It doesn't, he whispered. It feels like the most right thing in my life. Then hold on to that. When the voices in your head start telling you you're wrong, remember how this feels. I moved my hands to frame his face. Remember that being with you is the only time I feel like myself. He leaned forward until our foreheads touched. I'm scared, Tyler. I'm so fucking scared. I know. I'm scared too. What if I can't be brave enough for both of us? You don't have to be brave for both of us. You just have to be brave for yourself. I kissed his forehead softly. And you don't have to do it alone. Promise me something, he said. Anything. If I try this, if I try to be honest about what this is, and I mess up, if I panic and hurt you again, don't give up on me completely. Not yet. The vulnerability in his voice made my throat tight. Max, I'm not going anywhere. You might. If I keep being a coward. You're not a coward. You're just scared. There's a difference. He pulled back to look at me. Is there? A coward would have run already. A coward wouldn't be here having this conversation. I smiled at him. A coward wouldn't have told me I mattered to him. You do matter to me. More than you know. Then show me. Not with grand gestures or public declarations. Just show me by being present. By not disappearing every time we get close to something real. I can try. That's all I'm asking. He was quiet for a moment, then, Tyler. Yeah, I'm gay. The words came out in a rush, like he had to say them quickly before he lost his nerve. I'm gay, and I'm in love with you, and I have no idea what to do about it. The world stopped. Everything in me went completely still except for my heart. which was beating so hard I felt dizzy. Max, don't say anything yet, he said quickly. Please. I needed to say it. I needed to hear myself say it. I nodded, not trusting my voice. I've been in love with you for months, he continued, the words coming easier now that he'd started. Maybe longer. And I've been so terrified of it that I convinced myself it was just physical, just something I could control and contain and eventually make go away. And now I know I was lying to myself. And I know that lying to you is the worst thing I could have done. He took a shaky breath. I don't know how to do this, Tyler. I don't know how to be gay or how to be in love with another man or how to risk everything I thought I wanted for something I actually need. We'll figure it out together. What if we can't? What if I'm too damaged by all this internalized shit to ever be good for you? I reached for his hands again. Max, look at me. He did. I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm not asking you to fix yourself overnight. I'm just asking you to stop fighting this so hard that you hurt both of us in the process. I don't want to hurt you anymore. Then don't. Trust me enough to be honest with me. Trust yourself enough to admit when you're struggling instead of taking it out on us. I love you, he said again, like he was testing how the words felt in his mouth. I love you, and it terrifies me, but I can't pretend I don't anymore. I love you too, I said, and watched his face transform with relief and wonder and something that might have been joy. Really? Really? I have for so long I can't remember when it started. He kissed me then, soft and desperate and full of everything we'd been trying not to say to each other. When we broke apart, he rested his forehead against mine again. What happens now? He asked. Now we take it one day at a time. We figure out how to be honest with each other. We stop treating this like it's temporary or shameful. And everyone else? Everyone else can wait until we're ready. But Max, we have to be working toward ready. We can't hide forever. I know. He sighed. I just need time. You've got it. As much as you need. What if I need a lot of time? Then you need a lot of time. But you have to promise me you'll use that time to work on accepting yourself, not just to put off the inevitable. I promise. We stood there holding each other, and for the first time since this whole thing started, it felt like we were on the same side instead of fighting against each other. The fear was still there. I could feel it in the tension in his shoulders, in the way he held onto me like I might disappear. But underneath the fear was something solid and real and worth protecting. Tyler. Thank you. For what? For not giving up on me. For pushing me to be honest even when I didn't want to be. For seeing something in me that was worth fighting for. I pulled back to look at him. Max, you're worth fighting for. You're worth everything. The smile he gave me was small but genuine, the first truly unguarded expression I'd seen from him in weeks. I'm going to try to believe that. Good. And I'm going to keep reminding you until you do. This is going to be hard, he said. Yeah, it is. But it's going to be worth it? I kissed him again, pouring everything I felt into it. All my love and hope and determination to make this work. It's going to be worth everything. The next few days passed in a strange, fragile peace. Max had said the words, admitted he was gay, admitted he loved me, but I could see him retreating again, like a turtle pulling back into its shell after being exposed to too much light. He'd meet my eyes during practice, give me small smiles when no one was looking, but there was still that careful distance he maintained, as if he was afraid that getting too close might make everything he'd confessed somehow more real, more dangerous. I understood his fear. I really did. But lying in my dorm room that Thursday night, staring at the ceiling while my roommate snored softly across the room, I realized I couldn't keep living in this liminal space between friendship and something more. Max had acknowledged his feelings, yes, but acknowledgement wasn't the same as acceptance. And I was tired of being his secret experiment, the thing he reached for in darkness but couldn't claim in daylight. I'd spent 3 years carefully managing my own fear, dating Stephanie, playing the part of the straight wrestler, telling myself that someday I'd find the courage to live authentically. But Max's breakthrough had shown me something I hadn't expected, that love could be stronger than fear, if you let it be. He'd been brave enough to say the words out loud, even if he was still scared of what they meant. Maybe it was time for me to be brave too. The thought of telling Max how deeply I'd fallen for him terrified me. What we had now was fragile, built on stolen moments and whispered confessions in empty locker rooms. If I pushed too hard, demanded too much, I could lose him entirely. But if I didn't push at all, if I let him keep treating our connection like something shameful to be hidden away, I'd lose myself in the process. Friday after practice, I found him in the equipment room, organizing wrestling mats with the methodical precision he brought to everything when he was trying not to think. The space was cramped and private, filled with the familiar smell of rubber and disinfectant. He looked up when I entered, and I saw that guarded expression cross his face, the one that had become all too familiar over the past few days. "Hey," he said quietly, not quite meeting my eyes. "Just finishing up here. Max, we need to talk." He stiffened, his hands stilling on the mat he was folding. "Tyler, if this is about what I said the other night." "It is." I stepped closer, close enough that he couldn't avoid looking at me. "And before you try to take it back or explain it away, just listen to me for a minute." He set down the mat, his jaw tightening. I could see him preparing his defenses, getting ready to retreat behind those walls he'd built so carefully. But I wasn't going to let him hide this time. "I've been thinking about what you said," I began, my heart hammering against my ribs. "About being gay. About loving me. And I need you to know that I heard you, really heard you. But I also need you to hear me." Max's breathing had gone shallow, his eyes darting toward the door like he was calculating an escape route. "Tyler, please don't." "I'm falling in love with you," I said, the words rushing out before I could lose my nerve. "Not just physically, not just because you're convenient or safe or whatever this started as. I'm falling in love with who you are when you let your guard down. With the way you worry about everyone else before yourself. With how hard you try to be perfect because you're scared of being rejected for who you really are." He took a step back, shaking his head. "You don't understand what you're saying." "I understand perfectly." I followed him, not letting him retreat. "I understand that I think about you constantly. That when I'm with Stephanie, I'm wishing I was with you. That every time you smile at me like I actually matter, it feels like I can breathe properly for the first time all day." "Stop." The word came out broken, desperate. "Tyler, you can't. This isn't." "Why? Because it's too real? Because if I love you, and you love me, that makes us something you can't explain away." He pressed his back against the wall, trapped between my words and the concrete. His face was pale, his hands trembling. "You don't know what you're asking." "I'm not asking for anything you can't give," I said, gentling my voice. "I'm just telling you the truth. I'm in love with you, Max. Not the version of you that pretends this doesn't mean anything. Not the guy who flirts with girls at parties to prove he's straight. I'm in love with the person who told me he was terrified of losing everything. The one who cried in my arms because he's been carrying this alone for so long." Tears were building in his eyes. And I could see the war happening behind them, fear battling against hope, shame wrestling with desire. "If I let myself love you," he whispered, "really love you, what happens to everything else?" "I don't know," I admitted. "But I know what happens if you don't. You keep pretending to be someone you're not. You keep pushing away the one person who sees you and loves you exactly as you are. You keep living like your real self is something to be ashamed of." He closed his eyes, leaning his head back against the wall. "My father would disown me. The team would. God, Tyler, if anyone found out." "They don't have to find out. Not yet. Not until you're ready. But Max, you can't keep treating me like I'm some dirty secret you're ashamed of. Not when you mean everything to me." The silence stretched between us, filled with years of unspoken words and swallowed feelings. When he opened his eyes, they were bright with unshed tears. "You mean everything to me too," he said, his voice barely audible. "That's what terrifies me." Something loosened in my chest, like a knot I'd been carrying for months finally coming undone. "Then why are we fighting it?" "Because I don't know how to do this," he said, gesturing helplessly between us. "I don't know how to be gay. I don't know how to love someone when I've spent my whole life being told that loving you makes me broken, wrong, disgusting." I stepped closer, close enough that I could have touched him if I'd reached out. "You're not broken. You're not wrong. And you're definitely not disgusting. My father thinks I am. My high school coach, most of the guys on the team. Fuck what they think," I said, surprising us both with the vehemence in my voice. "Max, their opinions don't get to define who you are. They don't get to decide whether you deserve love." He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw something shift in his expression. Some of the fear was still there, but underneath it was something else, a tentative hope, fragile but real. "I've never said it before," he whispered. "Not to anyone. That I'm gay. That I could love someone like this. How does it feel to have said it?" He considered the question, his brow furrowing slightly. Terrifying. But also. He paused, searching for words. Like I can breathe a little easier. Like maybe I'm not as alone as I thought. You're not alone, I said firmly. Whatever happens, wherever this goes, you're not alone anymore. Fresh tears spilled over, but he didn't look away this time. I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to keep hurting myself. But Tyler, I'm so scared of what loving you means. What if it means freedom instead of loss? I asked. What if it means finally getting to be yourself instead of the person everyone else expects you to be? He laughed, a sound caught between hope and hysteria. God, when did you become the brave one? When I realized that losing you because I was too scared to fight for us would hurt worse than anything your father or the team or anyone else could do to me. Max reached out then, his fingers brushing against mine. Such a small touch, but it felt like a declaration. I love you, he said, stronger this time. I'm terrified and I don't know what happens next, but I love you, Tyler. I love you so much it feels like it's going to kill me. It's not going to kill you, I said, catching his hand and holding it properly. It's going to save you. It's going to save both of us. He squeezed my fingers, and for the first time since his confession, he didn't look like he was planning to run. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be in love with you without destroying everything else. We'll figure it out, I promised. One day at a time, just like we said. But Max, we have to stop pretending this is just physical. We have to stop acting like caring about each other is something shameful. Even if we have to keep it private? Even then, privacy isn't the same as shame. We can protect ourselves without hating ourselves. He nodded slowly, like he was testing the weight of the idea. So what now? Now we stop lying to ourselves, I said. We stop dating people we don't want to be with. We stop pretending we don't care about each other. And we start figuring out what it looks like to build something real together. Something real, he repeated, like he was trying the concept on for size. Something real, I confirmed. You and me, not hiding from each other anymore. Max leaned forward, resting his forehead against mine. I'm still scared. So am I admitted. But I'd rather be scared with you than safe without you. He kissed me then, soft and tentative but without the desperate secrecy that had marked all our previous encounters. It felt like a promise, like the beginning of something we were both finally ready to claim. When we broke apart, he was smiling, not the careful, guarded expression he wore around others, but something genuine and undefended. I love you, he said again, like he was practicing the words, learning how they felt in his mouth. I love you too, I replied, and meant it with every fiber of my being. We stood there in the cramped equipment room, holding hands and breathing the same air, and for the first time in months, the future didn't feel like something to be feared. It felt like something to be built together. The silence that followed our mutual declarations felt different from all the silences that had come before. Where there had been walls and carefully constructed distance, now there was just us, raw, exposed, but finally honest. Max's hand was still in mine, and I could feel the slight tremor in his fingers that told me he was just as overwhelmed as I was. So what happens now? Max asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The vulnerability in his tone made my chest tight with emotion. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw past the fear to the hope he was trying so hard not to show. Now we figure it out together, I said. We stop pretending this is something it's not. Max nodded slowly, like he was testing the weight of the decision. I can't just come out to everyone tomorrow, Tyler. I'm not ready for that. I'm not asking you to, I assured him. Privacy isn't the same as shame, remember? We can take this at whatever pace feels right. The relief that crossed his face was immediate. Thank you. I need time to figure out how to be this version of myself. We have time, I said, squeezing his hand. But we can't keep lying to ourselves or to the people we're supposedly dating. That's not fair to anyone. Max winced. Stephanie and whoever you're going to pretend to date next. There won't be a next, I said firmly. I'm done with fake relationships. And yeah, I need to have an honest conversation with Stephanie. She deserves better than being someone's beard, even if she doesn't know that's what she is. I ended things with Katie weeks ago, Max admitted. I told myself it was because I needed to focus on wrestling, but really, I couldn't stand kissing her and thinking about you. The admission sent warmth flooding through my chest. You were thinking about me? A flush crept up Max's neck. Tyler, I've been thinking about you for months. during practice, during meets, when I was supposed to be studying. It was driving me crazy. I couldn't help but smile. Good crazy or bad crazy? Both, he said with a shaky laugh. Definitely both. We sat there for a moment, just looking at each other, and I felt something shift between us. The desperate edge that had characterized our previous encounters was gone, replaced by something softer but no less intense. Can I ask you something? Max said suddenly. Anything. That night you agreed to this whole arrangement. Did you know that you had feelings for me? I considered lying, making it easier for him, but we were past that now. Yeah, I knew. I'd been in love with you for months, maybe longer. When you suggested we could be physical without it meaning anything, I thought maybe it would be enough. That I could take what you were offering and not want more. Max's expression grew pained. God, Tyler. I put you through hell, didn't I? We put each other through hell, I corrected. You were protecting yourself the only way you knew how. I was terrified, he said quietly. Terrified that if I let myself feel what I was feeling, I'd lose control. Lose everything. And now, Max was quiet for a long moment, his thumb tracing patterns on the back of my hand. Now I'm still terrified, but I'm more scared of losing you than losing anything else. The words hit me like a physical force, stealing my breath. Max. I mean it, he said, meeting my eyes. These past few weeks, trying to keep distance between us while still being close to you. It was torture. Worse than any training session coach has ever put us through. I laughed despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm me. That's saying something. I love you, Tyler, Max said, and hearing those words from him still felt surreal. I don't know how to do this, and I'm probably going to mess it up 100 times, but I want to try. I want to try being us for real. We'll figure it out together, I said, echoing my earlier words. It doesn't have to be perfect right away. Max leaned forward, resting his forehead against mine. What if the team finds out? What if coach finds out? Then we'll deal with it, I said simply. But Max, we can't live our entire lives based on what-ifs and worst-case scenarios. You make it sound so simple. It's not simple, I admit it. But it's right. This, us, it's right, isn't it? Yeah, Max breathed. Yeah, it is. He kissed me then, soft and slow, and it felt different from every kiss we'd shared before. There was no urgency, no desperation, no undercurrent of guilt or shame. Just love, pure and honest and real. When we broke apart, Max's eyes were bright with unshed tears. I'm sorry it took me so long to get here. You got here, I said. That's what matters. We talked until the early hours of the morning, making plans and sharing fears, figuring out how to navigate this new reality we'd chosen. By the time Max finally left my room, the sun was beginning to rise, painting the sky in soft pastels. As I watched him go, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Real, honest hope for a future where I didn't have to hide who I was or who I loved. It wouldn't be easy. We'd have to be careful, discreet, mindful of the environment we were in. But we'd be doing it together, as partners instead of hiding in shame. For the first time in my life, I was exactly where I belonged.